Inflation is a big topic and a big concern in 2022, and today I'm going to give you my thoughts on specifically where you can go and specifically what strategies you can use to beat inflation. So I'm not going to talk about specific investments that outpace inflation. What I do want to talk about is the strategies that you can use from the Nomad Capitalist perspective to go where you're treated best, reduce the impact that inflation has on your life, and specific countries where you can go where things are actually cheaper. Now, if it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson, the founder of Nomad Capitalist. We're a boutique consultancy that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally reduce their taxes, diversify and protect their assets, get second passports, all the things to go where you're treated best. We also host an offshore conference called Nomad Capitalist Live, open to absolutely everyone. And one of the big topics that I'm seeing from my friends in the US is gas prices, petrol prices. Oh my goodness, I saw yesterday $100 to fill up a little car, to fill up the gas tank. And so let's start with gasoline. Where can you go where gasoline is cheaper? When I started traveling many years ago, I started noticing little things. Interest rates are higher in this country. This product is cheaper in this country. This food is more fresh in this country. You just kind of started to observe, like, there are places that are better than where you're at. Maybe they're not better overall, but they're better for one particular thing. So if you look at cheapest gas prices in the world, okay, you've got Venezuela, Libya, Iran, Syria, Algeria. Probably not going to go to those places. Kuwait, pretty boring place. You could certainly go there. I guess plenty of expats there. Angola, Nigeria, Turkmenistan, not places that you're going to go. But here's one that we've talked about a lot. Malaysia. If we put this in US dollar terms for US gallons, you're going to pay about $1.68 a gallon in Malaysia, where I have a home. So in liter terms, something like 50 cents, somewhere around that neighborhood. And so that's some of the cheapest gas in the world. Bahrain, a country we've talked about, certainly smaller, probably less to do for most expats, but which has a real estate investment visa, just as Malaysia has the MM2H program. Bahrain has real estate, it has a golden visa program, it's totally tax-free. They're next up. It's about $2 for a gallon of gas. So if you're paying astronomical prices, I saw as much as $8 in California, you can pay a lot less in these countries. Also on the list, Colombia came in, they were a little bit more. Ecuador, the UAE, right, not surprising. They came in at about $4 per gallon, so not cheap, but cheaper than what you're paying. By the way, one of the strategies that you should be using to beat inflation, the government who created and helped to create the inflation, they're still taking 30, 40, 50% of your income. So if you went to the UAE and you're able to dramatically reduce, if not eliminate, your taxes, that's going to help your money go a lot further. And so if you can basically arbitrage the money that you make from a Western business, move that to the UAE, using the kind of business tax strategies that we talk about, you can keep a lot more of your money. Georgia also, by the way, ties with the US basically. So Georgia's one spot below, $5.03, $5.04 in the US, so the country of Georgia. Again, you can move to Georgia and potentially pay as low as like 1% tax. They have a program for that. Potentially you can go and you can use that to dramatically reduce your tax. And so if you're going to pay the same amount for gas, you can say, listen, why not stay in the United States? But what does Georgia offer that I think many parts of the U.S. don't? And that is, you've got a lot more healthy food. You've got a lot more locally grown food. You've got more of that kind of farm-to-table vibe in the country. There's certain foods that I just wouldn't eat in the U.S. Things like tomatoes, they just don't feel right. They don't taste good either. You go to a place like Georgia where it's just grown down the street in some cases, and you have a lot better just experience, better lifestyle. So everyone's saying, like, well, why would I want to move out of my country just to save money on gas? Not only can you save money on gas, not only can you save money on taxes. In many of these countries, you can pay 0% or 1% or even 10% in tax, or you can spend part of your year there and spend part of the year somewhere else, and you can pay absolutely no tax there. So you can dramatically cut your cost of living in terms of the money that you're sending to the government, who basically created this whole situation to cause your prices to spiral out of control by printing money, etc. But health is another thing that speaks to me in terms of lifestyle. If you can lower your cost of living and get better quality in a country like Georgia, certainly, if you look at the list of the healthiest countries in the world, many of them are in Europe. I saw Singapore on the list, but you see places like Switzerland, also tax-friendly if you are 7 or even 8-figure entrepreneur. You can go to Switzerland, they've got a lump sum tax program. The food is healthier, it's often cheaper. And so if you can improve that, that's a big step forward in my opinion. Let me just run some numbers though. Let's just take Georgia, for example, as a place that obviously is not as developed. You're not going to have all the creature comforts, but you're going to have a much lower cost of living. And so if I look at how do I beat inflation in this environment, number one, reduce my taxes. Number two, reduce my cost of living. and if I arbitrage what I'm making now in a Western country and take that to a place where things are less expensive, those are two great ways to basically beat these prices that are going up. So Tbilisi, for example, versus, let's just take Chicago. You want to go to a restaurant, it's 195% cheaper in Tbilisi. You want to buy water in a bottle. No doubt, inflation has hit Georgia. I spent some time in Georgia. I go from time to time. About 2.5 years ago, I'd buy a glass bottle of this really nice sparkling water. They say there's like some health benefits. It'd be like 1 lari and 10 cents or something, 1 lari and 15 cents. Now it's 150. So definitely you've seen some inflation in the last 2.5 years, but you're still 338% cheaper than what you'd pay in Chicago, in this example, where, when I live in the United States, the kind of water you buy, it's mostly just stuff from the tap. It's in a plastic bottle. If you want something that's fancier, you're going to pay a lot more. And so again, just the quality, you're still paying, you're paying more in Georgia. Prices everywhere in the world have gone up. I mean, everywhere you've seen inflation. Some of the lowest, by the way, Singapore, Switzerland, down in the 2 or 3% range. But you're still paying like 1/4 as much for stuff in a place like Tbilisi than you would in Chicago, and the quality's better. 494% cheaper for bread, 385% cheaper than apples. You can just kind of scroll through this list. Pretty much everything is going to be cheaper. And so you want to beat inflation. How many people are working online now? How many businesses can be run from anywhere? How many people did what they do at home during the pandemic? I certainly do think that if you're especially an employee, or if you have employees, the consequences of remote work and people just being in all different countries is something that needs to be examined from a tax perspective, given that if you go to some other countries, you may be sucked into their tax net. So it's worth evaluating. But if you can work from home in Sheboygan, why can't you work from home in a place where you're going to get a lot more for your money? Maybe you find some of the opportunities that I talked about. Maybe you find your next big business opportunity. Maybe you find a better lifestyle. You know what I hear from people, by the way, that I talk to, clients of ours in the US, is like not only concerns about what's happening, including inflation, but they're like, I can't even let the kids go out in the backyard and play. You go to a place like Tbilisi, that's pretty commonplace. People are just going out, don't come home until it's sunset kind of thing. Now, let's do a comparison, Melbourne versus Dubai. You want something that's a bit more upscale. Dubai obviously gives you a lot of the creature comforts, a lot of the comforts, a lot of the luxuries, more so than a lot of places, even in a Western country. Compare that versus Melbourne, Australia. Okay, pretty close in terms of things like alcohol, right? Obviously, if you go to a country where they have duties on alcohol, that's going to be more expensive. That's a cost. In Malaysia, for example, where I spend time, alcohol is more expensive. Don't buy wine in Malaysia. Have someone bring you a bottle of wine, because you are just going to pay a lot more, not because of inflation, but because of taxes on alcohol. So Melbourne versus Dubai, listen, Australia has incredible alcohol taxes as well. Milk's more expensive in Dubai, alcohol's competitive, but you've got bread, 76% less, tomatoes, 290% less, taxis, 200% less. And again, the quality is higher. You're going to get driven. I've never been to Dubai where I'm not driven around in a Lexus or Mercedes. I mean, if you take a street taxi, but generally if you're using like an app, you're going to get really a top quality experience, better than what you would get in many places in the West. So if you want more luxuries, if you want to be driven around in a Lexus, if you want to have more of the farm to table lifestyle, there are places where you can do that. And again, all these countries that I'm talking about, you're solving what to me is the biggest cost on any successful person's expense list every year is, what are you paying in taxes? And so if you're an American, you need to do some proper tax planning, because you're always going to be liable to the US, but you can dramatically reduce the taxes you're paying. If you're from anywhere else, you can simply opt out of the system. Say, I'm tired of your inflation, I'm tired of your high tax policies, I'm tired of being blamed, I'm tired of the food quality being lower, the package sizes being smaller, and you can just go somewhere else and completely reduce your tax obligations or even eliminate them in a place like Dubai. So that to me is one of the biggest ways to put more money in your pocket, and then magically so the rest of the stuff gets absorbed, even if you can get costs to go down. You're also, when you move overseas, in my example of the car, maybe you're going to find out, you know what, I don't need a car. I'm just going to live, let's say, in a center area. I'm going to live in Dubai. I'm going to live in downtown Dubai. Or I'm going to live in the marina. You're not going to be driving nearly as much as you are if you live in Melbourne, for example. And so maybe you get rid of the car. Is there a car payment? Is there car maintenance? The cost of filling up the car. Maybe you walk more places. You just get an Uber wherever you want to go. So I think that there are certainly things when you move overseas that you're just going to eliminate from the expense list because you have them now, because it's a condition of living there. But if you don't live there, you can remove that. So for me, someone with an international perspective, this is how I look at reducing the impact that inflation has, is I choose places where I can control the variables that make inflation worse. You're not necessarily going to get rid of inflation in the world because it's been an international phenomenon, but if you do those things, you can reduce its impact, and the pandemic and work from home has shown just how accessible it can be to a lot of people.